There's this feeling you've had, and I bet you've never had a name for it. You want something all week. The show everyone swears is incredible. The food you've been craving. The text from the one person you were hoping would text. And it finally arrives, and it just sort of lands flat. The wanting was so loud, and then the having was silent. And tonight, probably an hour from now, it's going to happen again. You'll reach for your phone. You won't even decide to. Your hand just goes. Because the phone is there, and the quiet isn't. And you'll open that one app, the one you've opened, 10,000 times? And somewhere in the scroll, you'll feel almost nothing. And here's the part I really want you to hear. You are not imagining that. It isn't depression. It isn't laziness. It isn't broken willpower or some flaw in who you are. It's something way stranger, and honestly, way more interesting. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. The catch is that it was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. So get comfortable, because this is the story of how you slowly lost the ability to enjoy things, and, I promise you, how you get it back. To get why, we've got to rewind. Not a few years, about 200,000. But first, a quick pit stop in 1954. McGill University. Two scientists, James Olds and Peter Milner, slide a thin wire deep into a rat's brain, into a tiny spot near the center, and they wire it up to a lever. Every time the rat presses, it gets a little pulse of electricity, right there in the reward circuit. What happens next genuinely unsettled them. The rat presses the lever, then presses it again, and then it basically does nothing else. It presses and keeps pressing, choosing that lever over food, over water, over sleep. It would have pressed until it dropped. They figured they'd found the brain's pleasure center, and they were close, so close. But they were wrong, and the real answer would take another 40 years to dig up, because that circuit wasn't designed for a rat in a lab. It was designed for you, and for every single human who ever came before you. So picture it. For 200,000 years, your ancestors lived in a world ruled by one brutal little fact: scarcity. Calories were rare. A ripe piece of fruit. A hunt that finally paid off. A new face at the edge of the firelight. These weren't everyday things. They were the difference between making it and not. So evolution handed us this gorgeous, relentless engine to chase them. A system that rewarded the pursuit. A system that made you want. And for almost all of human history, that was a gift. It's only now, in the last few thousand days of our entire species, that the gift has quietly turned against us. So what did Olds and Milner actually find? Fast forward to 1997. A neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz over at the University of Freiburg figures out how to watch dopamine neurons fire in real time. And he finds something that flips what most people believe about pleasure completely on its head. Dopamine doesn't spike when you get the reward. It spikes when you expect it. Let that land for a second. Dopamine isn't the feeling of the bite. It's the pull toward the bite, the lean in, the anticipation. It's the engine of wanting. When a reward surprises you, dopamine floods the whole system. But when that same reward gets predictable, the dopamine quietly fades, even though the reward itself hasn't changed one bit. Your brain doesn't really care about having, it cares about chasing. Which brings us to the most important thing almost nobody knows. At the University of Michigan, two researchers, Kent Berridge and Terry Robinson, spent literally decades prying apart two things we'd always smushed together. They called them wanting and liking. Wanting is the craving, the pursuit, the dopamine. Liking is the actual pleasure, that quiet, warm hum when the thing finally arrives. And here's the gut punch. They run on two completely different systems, which means you can want something with every fiber you've got and feel almost nothing when you finally get it. So sit with that one. The scroll, the craving, the reach for the phone. That's your wanting system, fully intact, screaming at the top of its lungs. The flatness when you arrive? That's your liking system, starved, sitting in the dark. You're not broken. You're just running a wanting engine that's been hijacked, while your liking system waits quietly for somebody to turn the lights back on. So let's talk about that hijacking. Back in the 1950s, a biologist named Nico Tinbergen noticed something bizarre out in the wild. Birds would walk away from their own pale speckled eggs to go sit on a fake one he had painted. Bigger, brighter, bluer than anything that exists in nature. Given the choice between the real thing and a cartoonish knockoff, the birds picked the knockoff. Every single time. He called it a supernormal stimulus, a signal so cranked up, so exaggerated, that it overrides the real thing it was built to imitate. Fast forward to 2010. A Harvard psychologist named Deirdre Barrett asks the obvious, and kind of terrifying question. What if we've been building supernormal stimuli for ourselves? Food engineered to be sweeter and richer than any fruit that ever grew on a tree. Pornography. And a glowing little feed of endless, perfect, never the same twice novelty. Those are the painted eggs, and we cannot stop sitting on them. So what does all that flooding actually do to the machinery? At Brookhaven National Laboratory, a scientist named Nora Volkow used brain scans to show exactly what happens. The brain, drowning in dopamine, does the only sensible thing it can think of. It turns the volume down. It literally thins out its own receptors. So the next hit lands a little softer, and the next one, softer still, until the stuff that used to feel amazing feels like almost nothing. Because you adapted to a flood that nature never ever prepared you for. Now maybe you're thinking, fine, smart guy, I'll just go chase bigger stuff. A better job, more money, the next real win. Honestly, great instinct. Let's test it. In 1978, a team led by Philip Brickman at Northwestern studied people who had just won the lottery. Life-changing, enormous piles of money. And what they found should stop you cold. Within a year, the winners were barely happier than anybody else. And here's the kicker. They actually got less pleasure out of ordinary things. The morning coffee, the sunset, a friend calling just to talk. The giant win had quietly raised the floor of what their brain called normal, and everything smaller now just felt gray. That's the treadmill. You adapt to every win and the baseline resets, every single time. Chasing bigger isn't the way off the treadmill. It's just the treadmill, speeding up. And there's a bill waiting on the other side of all this. Anna Lemke, a psychiatrist at Stanford, describes pleasure and pain as two ends of a single seesaw inside your brain. Every time you stop down hard on the pleasure side, the seesaw tips. And to level itself back out, it tips the other way, into a little dip, a small debt of discomfort after every hit. Do it once, you recover no problem. Do it 100 times a day, and you start to just live down in that dip. Restless, on edge, flat. That nameless afternoon emptiness, that's the debt coming due. None of this is an accident anymore. The single most powerful supernormal stimulus ever built is sitting in your pocket right now, and it was engineered, on purpose, to exploit every rule we just talked about. Decades ago, the psychologist B.F. Skinner showed that the most compulsive reward isn't a reliable one. It's an unpredictable one, a reward on a random schedule. It's the exact logic of a slot machine. Pull, and maybe nothing. Pull again, and maybe everything. Your feed is a slot machine, and that unpredictability isn't a bug, it's the entire point. In 2021, researchers scanned the brains of people watching a personalized feed, and they watched the reward circuit, a little region called the ventral tegmental area, light up right on cue. Not because the next video is good, because it might be. Your 200,000-year-old wanting system, the one built to chase a single ripe fruit clear across a valley, cannot tell the difference between a feast that ends a famine and an algorithm that has learned the exact clip that keeps your thumb moving. So it never stops wanting, and you never start liking. And that silence you reach to fill every single night only gets a little louder. Okay, deep breath. Because I am not about to leave you sitting in the dark with all of this. There's a way back. And it's not a 30-day dopamine detox. It's not another app to fix your apps. It's something quieter, and honestly, a little harder. You give the system back the one thing it was actually built for: scarcity, effort, the wait. Let yourself get bored, like all the way bored. Long enough that the boredom slowly tips back into curiosity, the way it used to when you were a kid with nothing to do on a long summer afternoon. Make the reward cost something again. Earn the meal, earn the walk, earn the conversation, the page, the song. Because the pleasure was never actually in the having. It was always in the wanting that had to wait. And real talk for a second. If that flatness never lifts, if it follows you everywhere for weeks on end, that can be more than just wiring, and it is genuinely worth talking to someone real. No shame in that at all. But for most of us, on most days, the truth is so much gentler than we feared. You were never broken. You were just running beautiful, ancient software in a world that finally figured out how to read it. The feeling isn't gone. It's just waiting, on the other side of the silence, for you to stop filling it. So tonight, when your hand drifts toward that phone, maybe just let the quiet sit there with you instead. See what it's got to say.